it's not volleyball, it's softball. If it's not swimming, it's powerlifting or track and field. Very recently, we all heard about a 16-year-old by the name of AB Hernandez. She is transgender, and she took a top spot in multiple events, the high jump, the triple jump, coming in second in the long jump. She was the first openly trans athlete to dominate the girls' podium at a state level. Massive backlash here. The Trump administration is threatening to fine California schools. The DOJ claims allowing Hernandez to compete under her gender identity violates the Equal Protections Clause and defies Trump's executive order banning transgender athletes from women's sports. California officials are pushing back. Lindy, I know you want this one. Take it away.
I feel so strongly about this, and I'm going to apologize in advance. Actually, I'm sorry.
No,
not
don't
sorry.
apologize.
Sorry, not sorry that I feel strongly about this. We talked about Newsom. Newsom is a scumbag on this issue. He wants everyone to, he's trying to split the baby, actually.
Yeah,
he's trying to cater to the conservatives and say, I'm actually with you on the trans stuff.
I find it unfair.
He's treating us like we were born yesterday.
Well,
I don't think
principles.
so. Exactly. He's pretending that he actually cares about women, men being in women's sports. But he's also saying the solution to this is to create more trophies. He's basically saying, let's expand first, second, third place. Let's give trophies out to more people.
He doesn't care about women or trans people. He cares about no one.
He cares about his political career. That's all he cares about.
He cares about being in the White House. That's his North Star,
so
his
scared.
only moral compass.
Please no.
I want to talk about this one thing. So you've got 3 pillars, right? So number 1 is a fair playing field. We absolutely don't have that, and I'm going to lay that out scientifically based on the data. Number 2 is safety. It's arguable, track and field, you're safe. But boxing, I mean, we all just saw that Imane Khalif, or I hope I'm not mispronouncing.
Who's a man?
Which, by the way, I said from the beginning, XY chromosome equals male.
Not even intersex, right? That was just a man.
Just a man.
Straight up man who, by the way, wasn't even on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. Not that that actually matters. And then the third piece would be inclusion, which is obviously important. But when you weigh this all out, what is going to be the most relevant? So I want to put this one to bed. I own a sports medicine facility. I work with numerous sports medicine doctors. So let's break this down scientifically. Send this to your liberal friends and tell them to shut the fuck up. A groundbreaking genetic study published in BMC Biology, done by researchers, I'm not going to say their names because they're too difficult to pronounce, at the Weizmann Institute of Science and Molecular Genetics Department, pinpointed 6,500 genes that are differentially expressed between males and females. It is estimated that these genes are responsible for roughly 3,000 sex-specific differences in skeletal muscle alone outside of androgenization, meaning before puberty, before testosterone plays a role, okay? Men have more muscle mass, stiffer connective tissue, longer and larger skeletal structures, superior cardiovascular function, larger blood vessels. The list goes on and on and on. Every single modality of fitness, men are physiologically superior. It's not a fucking question. The earth is not fucking flat. Stop with this. Pre-puberty, guys.
Amen.
Sorry, let's look at it.
Snaps
Hold on, we're going to go piece by piece, and we're going to be done with this conversation, so help me God, send it to your friends. Pre-puberty, if we were to play the whole, oh, no, cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers are going to level the playing field. Okay, one study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine extensively researched peer-reviewed studies on the health-related fitness data of 85,000 Australian children ages 9 through 17. It found that when compared with 9-year-old females, 9-year-old males were faster with sprints by 10%, and in the 1 mile, they were faster by 16.6%. They could jump 9.5% farther from a standing start, which is a test of their explosive power. They could complete 33% more push-ups in 30 seconds and had a 14% stronger grip strength. Another similar study, Greek children published in the European Journal of Sports Science compared 6-year-old females and 6-year-old boys. And they found that boys completed 16.6% more shuttle runs in the same amount of time. They could jump 9.7% farther. The list goes on and on and on. Now let's get to cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers, because that's the game, right? Oh, but we've equaled the playing field by putting them on these medications. Okay, so a pioneer work by Gorn and colleagues published in the European Journal of Endocrinology compared the baseline measurements of thigh muscle in transgender men to transgender women. So transgender women being biological males who've transitioned to be female, transgender men, biological females who've transitioned to be male. So now you've got women that are on testosterone and blocking estrogen in this mix, okay? So who's gonna have more muscle? Ready? After 3 years of testosterone suppression, the trans women, so initially born boys, had 13% more thigh muscle at baseline.
Wow.
Another study published in the Journal of Endocrine Connect. I could go. Have we heard enough?
But
Do you
Jillian,
want more?
But
This is all
Jillian,
common
trans
sense,
women
too.
are women. That's all you have to say in response.
But by
Trans
the way,
women are women. That's it.
By the way, I'm fine with. I'm totally fine with
Yeah.
that conversation. If you want to give me the gender as a social construct, I will. By the way, look at Blaire and
Yeah.
always think you are a woman.
Except it's not.
Except I will
it's not
never
a-
play fucking sports against you.
Right.
A period. End of
Well,
story.
between us, I feel like it might be arguable, but
Really? Okay, that's it.
Probably.
Good.
You're like a fitness person.
And I do train, but with that said, the point is you cannot make that argument. Stop making these arguments. I can give you study after study after study. Pre-puberty. And to leave you with this, a 15-year-old boy is better at any sport, than the most elite female athlete in the world.
Whoa.
Period.
That's crazy.
End of story.
Wow.
Wow.
Now, I don't like. I was like, what is there to discuss?
And when Democrats deny signs like that, the way that they're doing, it undermines everything else. You
so
know,
sick of
Well,
this.
the relitigation of things that society already came to a consensus upon, which is why we had male and female sports, is ridiculous. And I hate it. I know that there's a lot of Democrats now that are recognizing it's like a 90-10 issue. Some people say 80-20. I think it's like 90-10.
90-10 probably.
But it's really frustrating because, you know, unfortunately, people don't understand that there's a big difference between transsexuals and the transgender movement. And I know people hate learning new words and all that, but this is probably the most important one to learn, is that transsexualism is something that predates the trans movement, gender ideology, queer theory by like 100 years.
Teach, I don't understand.
A transsexual is something that was being discussed back in like the late 1800s, as soon as medicine started really coming.
Okay.
And it was considered a mental disorder that you treated through medicine, and you can litigate if that's the right move or not. But
What
that's
do you think?
Well, I think it's an extreme case where it can be helpful, but I think that the fact that it's been umbrellaed to be, first of all, for minors at all, that was never even a thing 10 years ago when I transitioned.
Right.
And people don't understand that because, you know, a lot of people, they first heard the word trans like a year ago, 2 years ago. But when I started, the concept of a trans child wasn't even a thing. And yet now it's almost synonymous. When people hear the word, they think about sports and they think about children. And it's really horrific.
Can I actually ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I'm super curious what your thoughts are as someone who is transgender. Like, so I feel that most private transgender people I know, and I do have friends who are transgender, like they are upset at the activists because they feel that the maximalist approach that they're taking has led to a backlash toward the transgender
100%.
community.
It's not just the people who are transgender, it's the entire LGBT community. I
Thank
have
you.
gay friends.
Agree.
I have gay
Yeah,
and
support for
lesbian
gay marriage
friends.
is
I'm like, you guys
fighting
are creating a backfire effect.
Exactly, but you know, there's a new term now, Jillian. I don't know if you heard, normal gays, like people who don't subscribe to the
Didn't JD
trans.
Vance say normal gays?
Did he? I have no
think
idea.
he did on Rogan. He said normal gays.
You know what? I think the other thing is, as
think
well,
he did.
Blaire, and I think I've heard you talk about this, is it's the fact that with all this virtue signaling, the LGBT community has become like a protected class.
Exactly.
And as such, it's going to attract bad actors who want to leverage, oh, I'm trans or I'm gay or whatever it is to deflect.
And not only that, you know, you just heard me talk about transsexualism, and it looked like maybe it was your first time even hearing about the differentiation.
Exactly.
and
Like
that's-
there's cross-dressing.
Right, which is a
there's
fetish and a sexual thing.
Okay.
And then transsexuals would be, you know, someone who has a mental disorder that is treated, and people don't like to talk about that, and that's why it's become this
Blaire,
social
explain
identity.
Do you think you have a mental disorder?
Yeah, and I think there's no shame in that. Just like there's no shame in Elon being autistic. I don't
Oh
think
wow,
that
that's
100%.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So you think you're trans?
I'm
because
not a
you-
murderer, you know.
You-
Oh
Like,
my
it is
God,
what
I don't even draw that comparison.
Well, that's the thing, is that that's the comparison you have to try to make when people deny the fact that trans people do have that, real trans people, like you made the
Okay, I'm
differentiation.
trying to understand. Are you saying that you're trans because you have a mental disorder?
For sure.
You don't think
Wow.
it's biochemical?
Blaire,
Wait, hold on.
No, I think mental disorders can be biochemical too. I think it's probably I think similar to gay, it's probably a combination of things, nature versus nurture, and it's such a politicized topic. Who really knows? Like, I don't think
Do you feel
anyone.
you had a choice? Because I don't feel I had a choice.
I think that I had a choice to transition for sure, and that's why I
Okay.
don't like how people who have not transitioned take on the word and then end up joining sports leagues, doing crazy shit. I just learned we can cuss on the show because you were.
I'm sorry. I tried not to, but I just can't anymore.
Well, now I know I can a little bit.
little bit.
So no, but it is crazy, and the topic has become this political football for both sides. But I'm also not going to pretend like Democrats weren't the ones that first leveraged it as a political football.
Oh, they sure did.
Thank
when
you
I
for
talk
taking
to
ownership. This is the first time I've ever heard anyone
I
take
don't love
ownership.
the mental illness piece. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
Why? It
Here's
used
why.
to be in the
Here's why.
DSM.
Yeah.
Because
It is in the DSM.
being gay is not a mental illness, and I can
But that's
speak-
not trans.
But Blaire, I would argue
This
that
is a
your
sexual
choice on this
orientation,
matter
right?
was probably as much of a choice as mine. And when you look at the research, there is a robust amount of data to
But
suggest
isn't
you're-
yours a sexual orientation and hers is just her
Identity.
I don't
Yeah.
think so, though. Well, I would argue that there's a hormonal component. Like with gays, there's some research to suggest, like with gay men, how much testosterone was in the mother's body at the time.
There's
And
multiple things.
Huberman has a great segment on this. I suggest people watch it. A study about your hands and fingers, and it has to do with testosterone exposure in utero.
Yeah.
And I don't love that stigma. My feeling on this is like, listen, let Blaire live however she wants to live. Let me live however I want to live. Now, when it crosses over where trans athletes are kicking women's asses up and down the field, it's a safety issue, it's an inclusion issue.
Well, that's a violation of the social contract that was once in place. You know, just
good
because
point.
this has become such a big political topic in the last, I would say, decade, it doesn't mean trans people didn't exist before, and yet we
Right.
never heard about these issues. And it's because there was a social contract. And when I talk to trans people I know who are not crazy leftist or pretending to be trans, like you mentioned, which is a really important piece, I want to get more into that, is that there's a political identity of being trans as well. Whereas I didn't have any strong political opinions when I transitioned. That didn't come into play at all. But I'm seeing a lot of people call themselves queer, non-binary, whatever the fuck, because
Blaire,
they're radical leftists.
I've
and
never, by the way, been able to figure out what queer means. If anybody can tell me, I
Still
would
don't
love
know
it.
to this day.
well, it used to
Nobody
be
knows.
when they killed us back in the past, they would call us that. That was the slur. But now
I
are
remember
supposed
that.
to
Like
accept
you were
that.
queer, you were weird. I
Right.
have tried to figure this out
Which
for
is
probably a
fine.
decade. What does that mean?
I'm pretty sure it's just like atypical relationships, right? Like, for example, like Blaire perfectly looks like a woman, but you're biologically male. So is Joey, would people technically consider Joey queer? Like, he's straight because Blaire looks like a woman,
That's a
right?
whole other bag of worms.
But
I get
queer
what
is
you're
like atypical relationships that don't necessarily fall into like a perfect category, for example.
yeah, it's an umbrella term, but the danger in making everything an umbrella term is it loses its original definition. And so I can sit here and talk about, you know, the origin of transsexuals and, you know, it's not your fault, not anyone's fault. People don't really know it because it's this new political movement, which is completely, I'm fundamentally not even just distant from that political movement, I'm disconnected from it. I didn't transition because I was like, you know what, I want to make a statement and I also knew the social contract inherently that transitioning does not make you a female. It makes you a trans woman, makes you a trans man. And that's a particular category in life. It's not a third gender, but it's a category in life.
Thanks for making
that. I would absolutely see you as like one of my girlfriends. Isn't that how you'd want me to perceive you, by the way?
Well, of course, I'm not saying like you need to be calling me a man and shit, but like at the same time, we could never relate on certain things. Like, I'm never gonna
Getting
get,
your period count
I'm never
back?
gonna give birth. I'm never gonna get a period. And
Blaire,
there's more to what a woman
You're
is
lucky
than
on
that.
that period
But
thing,
those
take
are
my
still
word for it.
fundamental
Yeah, it's a- you were
differences.
spared.
There's certain social aspects of womanhood that trans people, if they actually transition, can experience. And so we can sit and riff about, you know, things we experience in common all the time. But the inability to notice and state the difference is what causes the social, you know, distortion of sports and kids and all that.
Yes.
Can I
And
say
can I
one
just-
thing real quick?
Lindy, you're
I
next.
want to go back to AB Hernandez for a second.
Do it.
Because if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about high
The
school,
athlete that
high school age
crushed
students,
in
right?
In the track and field stuff in California.
So like, I'm a little bit, look, I agree that it's unfair to include trans women in women's sports. I just do because of everything you listed and the studies you mentioned. But I also feel terrible for Hernandez because we know what today's society is like, and we know that
Let her compete with the boys.
her, well,
Let her
exactly.
take the hit.
Make it
you
trans
take the
league. That would be
unfairness
fun.
then.
I know, but let me finish the point. By
Yeah, you're right.
allowing
Finish the point.
by
Sorry.
allowing her to compete against biological women, it leads to a lot of like anger and animosity toward AB Hernandez.
You're right.
And AB Hernandez is a minor at the end of the day, and I feel terrible that like the state of California and our terrible governor weren't willing to listen to the general public, which overwhelmingly does not agree with this.
And set the trans kid up to fail too.
Yeah, and they basically
Yes, good point.
set her up in a situation where I'm sure that she's now dealing with harassment and terrible people saying terrible things to her. I don't know. I hate it, and I want everyone to be respected. I don't want the trans community to feel like they're.
It goes both ways, though.
It does go both ways.
You have
because
to give respect to get respect,
Yeah.
and that's something kids in general aren't taught anymore.
I mean,
Blaire, I wanted
Yeah.
to say I really enjoyed your clip about how people transition for clicks.
yeah, it's
And
a
I
thing.
want to
It's
broaden
disgusting.
that.
That's that
someone,
social contagion piece. You're saying?
Exactly, and I think it's bigger than that. For example, the Exhibit A. Again, I'm gonna offend some people, but I don't give a fuck, guys. Tim McBride.
Just dropping the F-bomb the whole show.
I don't even care. I don't
fired
even
today.
care.
Sarah/Tim McBride.
Tim/Sarah McBride. She is now the star of the Democratic Party. She's getting gigs. She's getting gigs. She was the keynote speaker for the final donor dinner before 2020. I think I mentioned this.
I think they're
like
trying to make
this.
Jasmine Crockett the star of the
Well, I mean,
Democratic
like,
Party.
well, I'm just,
embarrassing.
it's not only that, but
Oh my
they're
God.
elevating her as this like emblem of democracy. I mentioned this in a previous episode. At the final donor dinner before the election, she was alongside Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania governor.
I've seen what you're talking about,
like
Lindy.
they elevated her to this like
But
echelon.
she's not doing. I mean, like she's not
Yeah.
doing anything. Like she's
I
just a
like,
member of Congress who's
I really
transgender.
think there's a part of her who's relishing the attention.
Well, I do
in
think she's a
transitioning.
Nazi.
what?
She supports children transitioning.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Well, let's segue.
Why?
I
Which
did
is
see that
which
clip
is
of her
quite literally,
reading.
you know, when you people like to talk about how the Nazis were actually very much against trans people and burn the books, which is true, but they did do effed up medical
Did you see
experiments
that
on
clip
kids.
of her reading to kindergarten students saying
Exactly,
it's okay
and
to like transition, you should transition?
Thank you so much for watching Her Take. If you like the show, can you help us out by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification button, sharing, commenting, joining the conversation? It helps us out a ton with the algorithm. We appreciate you.